The story of the most iconic rifle in American history does not begin in a factory or on a battlefield. It begins in a modest workshop in California, in the hands of a quiet man who believed that freedom and innovation were inseparable. His name was Eugene Stoner, the son of working-class parents, raised during the Great Depression, a man who embodied the idea that in America, greatness is not inherited, it is engineered. Born in 1922 in Gosport, Indiana, Stoner grew up fascinated by machines. While his friends dreamed of baseball and adventure, Eugene spent hours dismantling tools, radios, and engines. He never attended an elite university. His knowledge came from his hands, his eyes, and his relentless curiosity. When the United States entered World War II, Stoner joined the Marine Corps Aviation Unit, where he maintained machine guns and aircraft systems. It was there, surrounded by the smell of oil and the roar of engines, that he developed an obsession. He wanted to build something that would redefine the way soldiers fought, something lighter, faster, and more precise. After the war, America entered an age of innovation. The nation that had defeated fascism now turned its energy towards science, engineering, and the future. Jet engines, rockets, and nuclear submarines were born from the same spirit that filled Stoner's mind. He took a job as a machinist at the Fairchild Engine and Airplane Corporation, a company known for aircraft design. But in 1954, Fairchild opened a small division with an ambitious goal to rethink small arms design. The division was called Armalite, and that is where history would change. Armalite was not a giant weapons manufacturer. It was a group of engineers working in a cramped garage surrounded by aluminum scraps and old airplane parts. Their mission was audacious: to use aviation materials to create lighter weapons for American troops. Stoner became the chief engineer. His background in aircraft construction gave him an advantage no traditional gunsmith possessed. Where others saw steel, he saw aluminum alloy. Where others used wood, he imagined fiberglass and polymers. In 1955, he unveiled his first masterpiece, the AR-10. It was unlike anything the military had ever seen, sleek, futuristic, and half the weight of the M1 Garand. Its internal mechanism used a direct gas impingement system, channeling gas from each shot to cycle the weapon automatically. The design was elegant and simple, a perfect reflection of Stoner's belief that a good weapon should work like a good machine, clean, efficient, and reliable. The US Army tested the AR-10, but skepticism prevailed. Generals trusted heavy rifles made of steel and walnut, not something that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. The rifle was rejected in favor of the M14, a traditional design, powerful but heavy, weighing nearly 5 kilograms. For many inventors, that would have been the end. But for Eugene Stoner, the rejection only strengthened his resolve. He believed America's soldiers deserved better, weapons as advanced as the nation they defended. He returned to the drawing board, convinced that the future of infantry combat lay in lightweight, high-velocity rifles capable of giving every soldier the firepower of a small machine gun. So he began again. He scaled down the AR-10's design to fire a smaller, faster cartridge, the .223 Remington. This decision was revolutionary. Instead of brute force, it relied on speed and control. Tests showed that even inexperienced shooters could fire rapid, accurate bursts with little recoil. The new rifle would be called the AR-15, Armalite Rifle, Model 15. By the late 1950s, the Cold War was intensifying. The Soviet Union had fielded its now famous AK-47, a rugged automatic weapon spreading through communist regimes across the globe. The United States needed an answer, something lighter, smarter, and unmistakably American. Yet once again, bureaucracy stood in the way. The Pentagon's procurement offices preferred tradition over innovation, but fate intervened. In 1959, facing financial strain, Armalite sold the rights to the AR-15 to Colt's manufacturing company, a century-old arms producer with deep ties to the US military. Colt executives recognized immediately what the government had missed. Stoner's invention was the future. They refined the design, prepared large-scale production, and began marketing it to military leaders. Among those leaders was General Curtis LeMay, the charismatic commander of the US Air Force and one of the most influential men in Washington. LeMay tested the AR-15 personally. Its precision, lightweight, and reliability impressed him so much that he ordered thousands for his security forces, a move that would eventually push the army to take notice. As Stoner watched his creation finally gain recognition, he knew the tide had turned. The same rifle once dismissed as too modern was now seen as the embodiment of American ingenuity, proof that innovation, not imitation, was the key to victory. By 1960, the AR-15 stood as a symbol of the new American century, forged not in the halls of bureaucracy, but in the mind of a single engineer who dared to challenge convention. The rifle's journey had just begun. Soon, it would be renamed M16, and its echo would thunder through the jungles of Vietnam, where it would face its greatest trial and define its ultimate legacy. When the AR-15 left Eugene Stoner's workshop and entered the hands of Colt's engineers, it carried with it the promise of a new era of warfare. Lightweight, modular, and astonishingly accurate, it represented a shift from brute force to precision, from the heavy steel of the past to the elegant efficiency of the space age. By the early 1960s, America was racing not just in space, but on the ground, to prove that its technology could outthink and outfight the Soviet bloc. The rifle that would soon be called the M16 was about to become a symbol of that belief. Colt's marketing team presented the weapon to military leaders as a rifle for the modern soldier. Its aluminum receiver made it half the weight of the M14, its recoil was minimal, and its small 56 Silu 45mm cartridge allowed troops to carry twice as much ammunition without sacrificing lethality. The bullet's high velocity caused devastating wounds, tumbling on impact, an unintended but decisive feature. But adoption inside the Pentagon was anything but simple. Traditionalists resisted, arguing that the M14's powerful 7.62mm round offered better penetration through jungle and armor. Still, America's involvement in Vietnam was deepening, and commanders needed a weapon suited to the dense, humid terrain. In 1964, under pressure from Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, the U.S. Army formally adopted the M16 as its standard service rifle. It was hailed as a triumph of American ingenuity. At first, troops were enthusiastic. They admired its light frame and accuracy in the early engagements, but within months, reports from the field began to change in tone. Soldiers wrote home describing horrifying malfunctions, rifles that jammed mid-fight, cartridges that failed to eject, chambers fouled with black residue. In the steaming jungles of South Vietnam, death often came faster than a cleaning rod could clear a barrel. The cause, as later investigations revealed, was a combination of bureaucratic shortcuts and miscommunication, not flaws in Stoner's original design. The Army had substituted a different powder for the ammunition than what Armalite and Colt had tested. The new propellant produced more residue, leading to carbon buildup and jamming. Worse, troops were told the rifle was self-cleaning and were not issued cleaning kits. By late 1966, casualty reports included tragic stories of American soldiers found dead beside rifles jammed mid-cycle. Letters from the front reached Congress. One read, "My husband died with his rifle torn apart in his hands. Please someone, fix this." The scandal shook Washington. For the first time in U.S. history, the performance of a standard-issue rifle became the subject of a congressional investigation. In 1967, hearings exposed the truth. Stoner himself was called to testify. Calm and precise, he explained the rifle's mechanics and pointed directly to the ammunition change and the lack of maintenance supplies as the main causes. His testimony, backed by field engineers and ballistics experts, cleared his design of blame. What had failed was not American innovation, but American logistics. The response was swift. Cleaning kits were distributed. The chamber and bore were chrome-plated to resist corrosion. A new buffer system was introduced, and ammunition powder was standardized. The improved model was designated the M16A1. Within a year, reports from Vietnam shifted again. Soldiers praised the weapon's lightness in ambushes, its control during automatic fire, and its reliability once proper maintenance became standard. The same rifle that had once been cursed was now credited with saving lives. It earned a new nickname among troops, the Black Rifle. The transformation was dramatic and symbolic of America's resilience. Confronted with failure, it adapted, improved, and triumphed. The M16A1 began to appear in every major unit, from the 1st Cavalry Division to the Marines patrolling the Mekong Delta. The United States had turned disaster into advantage, and the rifle became the embodiment of that turnaround. By the end of the 1960s, over 1 million M16s had been produced. The rifle's influence extended far beyond Vietnam. NATO allies began testing it, and the 5.56mm round would later be standardized across Western militaries. The weapon's architecture proved so versatile that entire generations of firearms, from sniper rifles to carbines, would trace their lineage back to Stoner's system. For the men on the ground, the M16 was more than a tool. It was a lifeline. Its synthetic furniture resisted the tropical rot that destroyed wooden stocks. Its accuracy at range gave patrols confidence in the unpredictable jungle. One Marine corporal later wrote, "When the M16 ran clean, it felt like an extension of your body. It pointed exactly where your mind wanted it to go." Back home, television networks broadcast footage of young Americans carrying the sleek black rifles through rice paddies. To the public, the weapon became an image of the Cold War's newest battlefield. A struggle fought as much through technology as ideology. The AK-47 symbolized the Soviet bloc's rugged collectivism. The M16 represented America's belief that progress and precision could outmatch raw force. For Eugene Stoner, the war was bittersweet. He had left Armalite years before and received no royalties from the rifle's success. Yet he remained quietly proud that his design, born in a modest California workshop, had become the standard for the world's most powerful military. By the early 1970s, the M16 had proven its worth. It was lighter, faster, and more adaptable than any weapon before it. It had turned the lessons of failure into a doctrine of constant improvement, a distinctly American trait. The rifle that once jammed in the jungle would soon serve in deserts, tundras, and cities across the world. Its story, and that of the nation that built it, was far from over. By the early 1970s, the M16A1 had redeemed its reputation. What began as a scandal in the jungles of Vietnam had turned into a triumph of engineering, logistics, and perseverance. Through adaptation, the United States had not only fixed a rifle, it had redefined what modern warfare looked like. The lessons learned from the M16's painful beginnings forged a new generation of American firepower that would dominate global battlefields for decades. The M16A1 was now the standard weapon of the US military, replacing the older M14 in nearly every unit. It weighed just over 6 pounds, fired faster, and could be easily disassembled in the field. Its 20-round magazine, later upgraded to 30, allowed soldiers to stay in the fight longer without reloading. But its true innovation was not in its statistics, it was in its philosophy. Before the M16, rifles were designed like monuments, heavy, rigid, and meant to last forever. The M16 changed that mindset. It was modular, built to evolve, to accept new attachments, optics, and parts. It was not a symbol of the past, but a platform for the future. American troops, once skeptical, now swore by it. The lightweight made long jungle patrols survivable. The high-velocity round allowed soldiers to suppress enemies at distances where older rifles struggled. In close quarters, its controlled bursts could stop ambushes before they began. It became a part of every soldier's identity, the black silhouette that marched through the fog of war beside the American flag. But while it symbolized freedom to some, it was seen as a sign of dominance to others. Around the world, America's rivals studied the weapon closely. The Soviet Union, proud of its AK-47, now faced a rival that was faster and more precise. Western allies began to rearm themselves with the 5.56mm cartridge, adopting it as the NATO standard in 1980. It was a recognition of US superiority in small arms design, the victory of science over simplicity. In laboratories and training camps, engineers pushed the design even further. The rifle evolved into the M16A2, incorporating improvements from years of feedback, a stronger barrel, adjustable rear sights, and a burst fire control instead of full automatic. It was the perfect balance between discipline and firepower, a rifle that rewarded skill, not recklessness. The M16 family became a symbol of American adaptability. No other weapon system in history had transformed so many times in so many hands while remaining fundamentally the same at its core. It proved that the strength of the United States did not lie in static tradition, but in its ability to learn, innovate, and rebuild. Through the 1980s and 1990s, the rifle's reach extended beyond the battlefield. Hollywood immortalized its sleek frame and distinctive sound. News footage from Lebanon, Panama, and Somalia showed American troops carrying the same black rifle born in a Californian workshop 3 decades earlier. To the world, it became synonymous with American intervention and American might. Meanwhile, in domestic life, the AR-15 civilian variant began its rise. Colt, still holding the patent, marketed it to law enforcement and private citizens as a sporting and defense rifle. Its precision, reliability, and futuristic design appealed to millions. For many Americans, owning an AR-15 meant more than owning a firearm. It was an expression of the same pioneering spirit that had built the nation itself. Back on the global stage, the rifle's descendants continued to evolve. Special operations units like the Navy SEALs and Delta Force customized their M16s with shorter barrels, optical sights, and suppressors, creating the M4 Carbine, a lighter, more compact version suited for rapid missions. By the 2000s, the M4 had become the new standard, but its DNA remained pure Stoner, the same direct impingement gas system, the same modular design, the same American ingenuity. As technology advanced, competitors emerged, Germany's HK416, Belgium's FN Scar, but each owed its lineage to the foundations laid by Eugene Stoner. His concepts had become the language of modern weapon design. Every new rifle was, in some sense, a dialogue with the M16. Eugene Stoner himself watched the evolution quietly. By the time of his death in 1997, his creation had armed not just the US military, but dozens of allied nations. From Israel to South Korea, from Colombia to the Philippines, soldiers carried variations of his design. For them, it was not just a rifle, it was the extension of an idea that precision and freedom were inseparable. The rifle's journey reflected that of the country that made it. Both had faced failure, criticism, and reinvention. Both had emerged stronger, not by rejecting the past, but by transforming it. By the turn of the millennium, the M16 and its offspring had fired in nearly every major conflict where American troops stood. In the sands of Kuwait, the streets of Mogadishu, and the mountains of Afghanistan, it had proven itself again and again. Its reliability had become legend, its silhouette iconic. Even critics could not deny the truth. The rifle that once stumbled in the mud of Vietnam had become the most successful military firearm in modern history. The sound of its shot, sharp, controlled, unmistakable, became the soundtrack of America's military era. And behind every echo of that sound was a legacy of innovation, sacrifice, and national pride. The age of dominance had begun. The United States now possessed not only the most powerful army in the world, but also the most influential weapon of the century, a rifle born from the mind of one man and perfected by the will of an entire nation. By the dawn of the 21st century, the echo of the M16's creation had spread far beyond American borders. What began as a single man's innovation had evolved into a global standard, the most influential rifle design of the modern age. From the jungles of Asia to the deserts of the Middle East, its profile became a silhouette of power, precision, and technological supremacy. The M16A2 and M4 Carbine, direct descendants of Eugene Stoner's original design, were now in the hands of soldiers on nearly every US mission around the world. Wherever America went, the rifle went with it. From the Persian Gulf War in 1991 to the early operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, it became an inseparable companion to the modern American soldier. During Operation Desert Storm, the M16A2 proved that it had outgrown the ghosts of Vietnam. In the fine dust and searing heat of the Kuwaiti desert, it performed with unwavering reliability. US Marines and Army infantry praised its accuracy and control, especially at long range. Combat footage showed soldiers firing in the open desert, striking targets hundreds of meters away, a feat that reinforced America's technological advantage. The lightweight design meant troops could move faster, carry more ammunition, and stay effective longer than their opponents. The world took notice. Nations across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East sought to replicate or acquire the rifle. Israel's Galil, Canada's C7, and South Korea's K2 all borrowed from Stoner's architecture. The 5.56 Sex 45-meter cartridge, once controversial, became the official NATO standard. In an era where alliances were built on logistics as much as diplomacy, the United States had quietly achieved something remarkable. It had standardized the future of warfare. But the M16's evolution was far from complete. In 1994, the M4 Carbine entered service. Shorter, lighter, and better suited for urban warfare. It became the weapon of choice for special operations forces who needed versatility in close-quarters combat. Equipped with optical sights, laser designators, and suppressors, the M4 became a modular platform adaptable to any mission, environment, or soldier. Its ability to morph from a precision weapon to a compact assault rifle made it the perfect tool for the unpredictable wars of the 21st century. When the United States was attacked on September 11, 2001, and troops were deployed to Afghanistan, the M4 was there. Images of soldiers advancing through rocky valleys with the rifle slung across their chests became symbols of America's response. Sleek, disciplined, and relentless. In the Iraq War that followed, the M4 and M16A4 defined the modern infantry's image. Optics, rails, and attachments replacing the iron sights of earlier decades. Yet, behind the scenes, American engineers continued to refine Stoner's system. The rifle's direct impingement gas mechanism, though elegant, required regular maintenance under extreme conditions. Companies like Heckler & Koch adapted it into piston-driven systems, giving birth to the HK4-16, itself a direct descendant of the AR family. But even as competitors emerged, none could eclipse the cultural and operational dominance of the M16 lineage. The rifle had become more than a weapon. It was a language of engineering, taught in every military academy and studied in every arms factory. Its influence reached even its rivals, the Russian AK-12, the French farmers, and the British SA-80, all incorporated lessons drawn from Stoner's modularity and ergonomics. At home, the AR-15 civilian platform exploded in popularity. To millions of Americans, it represented not militarism, but individual liberty, a symbol of self-reliance and the constitutional right to defense. Law enforcement agencies adopted semi-automatic variants, praising their reliability and adaptability. For enthusiasts and veterans alike, maintaining and modifying the rifle became almost a ritual, a mechanical expression of the same creativity that had built it. As decades passed, the M16 story intertwined with that of the nation itself. It appeared in news footage, films, and video games, shaping the global perception of American power. Its black frame and angular silhouette became as recognizable as the flag it defended. The rifle that had once struggled for acceptance now stood as the most produced Western firearm of all time, with tens of millions of units in service and civilian use. Yet through all its versions, AR-10, AR-15, M16A1, A2, A4, and M4, the core remained Stoner's vision: lightness, precision, and simplicity through design. The heart of the system, the rotating bolt, the inline stock, the gas expansion chamber, was virtually unchanged since the 1950s. Few inventions in military history had proven so enduring. By the 2010s, new rifles began competing for the title of America's next standard. The SIG MCX Spear, designated the XM7, entered testing as part of the U.S. Army's next-generation squad weapon program. But even these cutting-edge designs carried Stoner's fingerprints, the same principles of modularity, balance, and recoil management that he pioneered in a California garage 70 years earlier. In museums and military exhibitions, the M16 and its variants now stand beside legends like the M1 Garand and the Colt 1911. Yet their story is different. They were not products of a single war, but of an evolving idea. The American conviction that progress is constant, that technology can always be improved, and that the power of freedom lies not in fear, but in innovation. As veterans of Vietnam and Iraq gather for reunions, their hands often return instinctively to the familiar grip of the weapon that accompanied them through the most defining moments of their lives. For them, it is more than aluminum and polymer. It is memory, it is survival, and for the world it remains unmistakably American. The rifle that began as a dream, stumbled through adversity, and emerged as the most influential firearm of the modern era. By the time the 21st century reached its third decade, the rifle born in a Californian workshop had already outlived its creator and most of the wars it had first fought in. Yet, it remained as relevant as ever. Eugene Stoner's design had transcended its era, transforming from a weapon of necessity into a lasting symbol of American innovation and individual freedom. Eugene Stoner passed away in 1997, quietly, far from the spotlight that his invention had long commanded. He never held the wealth or fame that other inventors achieved, but his legacy was already woven into the very fabric of modern warfare. The M16 and its civilian cousin, the AR-15, had become global icons, recognized in every conflict zone and every corner of military technology. In the decades after Stoner's death, the rifle he conceived continued to evolve. The US military refined the M16 into the M16A4, equipped with Picatinny rails for optical sights, flashlights, and laser systems. At the same time, the M4 Carbine became the standard weapon for America's ground forces. From the narrow streets of Fallujah to the mountain passes of Kunar, its silhouette was instantly recognizable. The emblem of a nation that had made precision its hallmark. But the rifle's endurance went beyond combat. Its architecture became the foundation of a modular ecosystem unlike anything the world had ever seen. Civilians, engineers, and gunsmiths began modifying the AR-15 platform into hundreds of variations. Long-range rifles, competition carbines, hunting models, and law enforcement versions. Every part, from the barrel to the trigger, could be swapped, improved, or customized. What Stoner had designed as a tool of war became a platform of creativity. By the 2010s, the AR-15 had become America's rifle. It was used by police officers, sports shooters, ranchers, and veterans who carried with them the same mechanical familiarity that once defined US soldiers. In American gun culture, it symbolized the spirit of independence, an instrument that, like the country itself, was born from the belief that freedom must always be defended and that innovation is a form of self-expression. Yet its prominence also brought controversy. As the AR-15 became widespread among civilians, it appeared in tragic headlines following mass shootings. Debates over its role in society divided the nation. Supporters called it a constitutional right, protected under the Second Amendment and essential for self-defense. Critics saw it as a weapon too powerful for ordinary citizens. The rifle that had defended freedom abroad now ignited questions about its meaning at home. Despite the debate, one truth remained undeniable. The design itself was a masterpiece of engineering. The AR-15's success lay in its simplicity and adaptability, qualities that made it both revolutionary and timeless. Unlike many weapons that faded into obsolescence, the M16 family continued to evolve through innovation, not replacement. In the 2020s, the US Army began testing the XM7, part of the Next Generation Squad Weapon program. It promised higher velocity and greater range, but even this next-gen rifle bore the unmistakable influence of Stoner's blueprint. Inline stock, modular frame, ergonomic controls, and a balance centered along the shooter's axis. The same principles first sketched in the 1950s. The DNA of Stoner's creation lived on, even in its successors. Around the world, Allied nations continued to manufacture and improve upon the original design. The Canadian C7 and C8, the German HK416, and the Norwegian HK417 all traced their mechanical ancestry to Stoner's gas-operated system. Military historians now place the M16 in the same lineage of transformative inventions as the longbow, the musket, and the machine gun. But unlike those, the M16 never truly left service. It simply adapted to each new century. In museums from Washington to Paris, the black rifle stands behind glass, its anodized surface reflecting the cold light of history. Plaques describe it as the rifle that changed the world. Veterans pause in front of it longer than any other display. Some smile, some weep. They remember the weight of it on long marches, the smell of oil and gunpowder, the sound that marked both survival and loss. But beyond the emotion lies a deeper truth, that Eugene Stoner's invention captured the essence of the American experiment. It was built on faith in the individual. One engineer, working with limited means, reshaped the way an entire military thought about war. It was refined by competition, challenged by failure, and perfected through relentless improvement. That cycle, invention, testing, adaptation, is the same cycle that defines the American story. Today, more than 10 million M16 pattern rifles remain in active service across the world. In the United States alone, more than 20 million AR-15s are owned by civilians. Every trigger pull, whether in training or defense, echoes a line that stretches back to one man's idea, that technology and freedom could coexist in the same piece of metal. Eugene Stoner never intended to create an icon. He wanted to build something that worked, something that gave soldiers an advantage and saved lives. But his creation became something greater, a bridge between eras, between the industrial and the digital, between invention and identity. As the 21st century advances, the rifle's story continues. Whether it is replaced, modified, or reimagined, its influence endures, not as a symbol of destruction, but as a testament to the American belief in progress, precision, and perseverance. The M16's journey, from rejection to revolution, from battlefield to legacy, mirrors that of the nation that made it. Both were born from struggle, both adapted to survive, and both changed the course of history.